Bear Grylls is that real-life hero we all watched during our childhood, performing feats that made our hair stand on end. These were things we couldn't even dream of doing, but he achieved them through sheer willpower. However, did you know Bear Grylls wasn't always this way? The man who appears fearless and indomitable was once weak, terrified, anxious, and steeped in depression. In his autobiography, Mud, Sweat and Tears, Bear Grylls writes that fear forces you to appear tough on the outside, but it makes you weak and fragile within. Bear Grylls' greatest fear was heights, known as acrophobia. Yet, ironically, a few years later, he would start every episode of his show by descending from a helicopter from dizzying heights. Bear Grylls was also part of the UK's elite special forces, SAS, where he gained extensive experience in parachuting. He had leapt from planes numerous times. In 1996, at the age of 21, Bear Grylls made a jump from 16,000 feet during a mission in Zambia. However, this time his parachute failed to open. As soon as he leapt, he released his parachute at the right moment, but continued to plummet rapidly. When he looked up, he realized the parachute hadn't fully deployed. In a panic, he began frantically pulling the cords to fully open it. Despite his efforts, he crashed through trees and hit the ground, losing consciousness. He landed on his back and immediately felt excruciating pain. The worst part was that he was still conscious after such a high fall. He couldn't move and just lay there crying out loud, hoping his comrades would come to rescue him. The pain was unbearable, and he thought death would be better than enduring such agony. But even death didn't come. He lay there in torment for what seemed like an eternity, until his comrades rushed him to a hospital in Africa. He remembers the doctor injecting him in the back, which slowly alleviated the pain. He thought he was getting better and tried to get up, but the doctor told him he couldn't walk anymore. Hearing this, 21-year-old Bear Grylls felt like his world had ended. His x-rays clearly showed that 3 vertebrae in his spine, TA, TT10, and TT12, were shattered. These are the strongest bones in the human back, and they were completely crushed. The young man who used to scale mountains now couldn't even walk to the bathroom, enduring the pain of those bones healing. While bedridden in the hospital, he thought he might never walk again, traveling and exploring new places where his life's meaning and purpose. And this injury had taken away his reason for living. These thoughts kept him awake at night, drenched in sweat from anxiety. His breathing became labored. Every night he regretted, pitied himself, even hating himself. 2 months passed, but instead of improving, his condition worsened. The pain increased and his body grew stiffer. Seeing his condition made him more negative, and nothing seemed right. He became angry and cried over small things. Why he slipped deeper into depression. Those who knew him thought Bear Grylls was a very positive person, mentally tough, and would face this problem with courage and positivity. But that wasn't the case. He was 21 and very scared. He didn't know how his life would proceed or what he would... He saw all his dreams collapsing before him. In the night, lying in bed, his eyes fell on a photo frame kept far away. It was a picture of Mount Everest. From childhood, Bear Grylls and his father dreamed of climbing Mount Everest one day. Seeing dust gather on that photo frame made him feel like his dreams were also gathering dust, which he couldn't tolerate. That night, with no one around, he mustered the courage to stand up, walked with crutches to that photo frame, dusted it off, and fell asleep thinking about how he could give himself the strength to live. This thought deeply settled in his subconscious mind, giving him hope and a reason to live. The next day, he remembered something his grandmother used to say, "Bear, son, everything that happens in life happens for good. It's humans who find excuses to make themselves sad and worried. Whenever you find yourself in trouble, always remind yourself that whatever is happening is God's will." Who never lets anything wrong happen. At that moment, he understood and felt the depth of this truth. He realized that he could have died in that accident. Because he was alive, God must have had a better plan for him. After this, he stopped worrying about what would happen in his life, whether he would walk again or return to the special forces. All these concerns ceased to bother him. As his overthinking diminished, his mind found peace. Stress and negativity started to decrease, and to repair his mind before his body. As his mind became stronger, his body started healing itself. His wounds began to heal, and the speed at which his bones mended increased. He remembered something his closest friend Ed Ames once said: often in God's hand there is birth, death, and then rebirth. And this injury marks your rebirth. Bear Grylls felt like a new person, like a newborn child with no worries about the past or future, just grateful for the present. Bear Grylls says life rarely gives a second chance, but if it does, be very grateful. He was grateful for his life, his broken back, and his dreams. He took the picture of Mount Everest in his hand and loudly declared, "As soon as I recover, I will touch the summit of Mount Everest." If one thing helped him the most in his depression, it was his goal, his aim, and his purpose. Until then, he had no reason to live, but in that state, when he couldn't even walk, he promised himself that he would climb Mount Everest. When he told people around him that he wanted to climb Mount Everest after recovering, they ignored his words. But his goal was crystal clear. He needed to recover as soon as possible. His body and mind both had a goal they could work on together. After 3 months post-accident, the pain started to subside. After 8 months, he was discharged from the hospital, and within a year, he was fully recovered. But the doctors forbade him from returning to Special Forces training. Without a job, he had no money, but to fulfill his dream, he needed 2.5 million rupees for training and equipment to climb Mount Everest. He wrote proposals to around 250 companies for sponsorship, but all of them rejected him. Despite facing rejection 250 times, he didn't give up. He knocked on many doors, but faced disappointment repeatedly. Then the SSAFI Forces Help Organization helped him realize his dream. 18 months after the parachuting accident, on May 16, 1998, Bear Grylls fulfilled his childhood dream. His journey to climb Mount Everest was a saga of its own, filled with hardships. 4 people lost their lives during the expedition, and Bear Grylls faced near-death experiences twice, barely surviving. Nonetheless, at the age of 23, he became the youngest Briton to reach the summit of Mount Everest. After this, his story became very famous. People began inviting him as a speaker at seminars. Several documentaries were made about him. Bear Grylls' journey shows us that true strength is forged in adversity. Embrace your fears, for within them lies the potential for your greatest triumphs. Until next time, stay strong and resilient. This is Mentor Thanos signing off.